together kind of a quick how-to reference video on the tips and tricks of utilizing Zoom as a virtual classroom. And big thanks and shout out to Zoom for making this available to literally everyone. 2020 is Zoom living its best life for sure. But ironically, a couple of weeks, maybe a month prior to COVID-19, I had to pivot very quickly on utilizing platforms. The platform I was using in my virtual classroom was not cooperating, so I had to find very quickly something that would work for my students, and that happened to be Zoom. So in a matter of days, I had to figure out how to make this virtual classroom work for my kids. So I get it. I get that overwhelming feeling of there's just too much to figure out. So let me share with you what I figured out and what worked really well for me in a short amount of time. So I'm in my Zoom room, and hopefully my neighbors mowing their lawns and stuff isn't too loud. But we're gonna just kind of take a look at what works and what's available in the Zoom room that can make a virtual classroom fantastic. So when you're in your Zoom room, there's two things that I usually have open in addition to what is automatically open. Now, granted, I don't have any participants in my room right now, so I don't have a whole grid of faces and things like that. But I open my participants tab, and this is where I'm going to see all of my students. Who's in my room, who's not in my room. This is when what I use for attendance, etc. and so forth. This is also where you're going to see students waiting to be let into your classroom from your waiting room. If you watched my Zoom settings video, you know that I have a virtual waiting room that all of my students go into. And I've heard that Zoom has kind of made that possibly automatic in most cases, but I'm not sure because I already had it set up for my classroom to work that way. So I'll open my participants panel, because when they enter, it chimes, so I know they're there and they're waiting. That's not necessarily as useful for the waiting room as it is once we start class. Once I'm in class and I'm busy teaching, maybe Sally shows up late. That chime in my ear lets me know that there's a student waiting and isn't getting missed. So I find the chime very helpful. It also chimes a different way when someone leaves. So if someone leaves class early or maybe before the exit ticket or things like that, I'll know and I can make note of it so that I need to follow up with that student after class. Maybe they're having tech issues or their internet blinked or whatever. But either way, you can follow up with that student and say, hey Bobby, I saw you left class early. I was wanting to follow up, make sure you got the exit ticket. Some features of your participant panel: you can mute everyone and you can unmute everyone. That's really handy in one foul swoop. But there's also the More tab. I usually go through this More tab before I let anyone in from the waiting room. I mute my participants on entry every time. That's more of a classroom management preference of mine. I do not allow my participants to unmute themselves. That's basically just requiring them to raise their hand before they speak. Same rules I had in my brick and mortar classroom. Enter and exit chime, I kind of explained that. Allow participants to rename themselves. A lot of kiddos are logging on right now using personal devices. They might not have a school Chromebook or a school issued laptop. So when my son logs in with my MacBook, it logs him in as me because he's using my Zoom account. So for whatever reason, that really bothers him that it's not his name. So I let him change it. Now, I don't have that ability to turn that on and off in his classroom. Only his teacher does. As a teacher, you might consider making this your first activity when they first join certain classrooms, like letting them know you have the first couple minutes of class to change your name if you need to, but then I'm going to turn that feature off. I have seen students changing their name continuously throughout class. You might even see students changing their names to something inappropriate. So just knowing that that function is there, that you can turn it on and off and use it as necessary. I usually keep them off now because now my students know how to log in with changing the name in the first place. Like for a while, some of my kids were coming in and it just said student. I was like, okay, who's student? Because I have 34 fifth graders, so I kind of need to know who they all are. And then of course my students are in a waiting room. And that's also, if you haven't noticed, you can't have more than one Zoom room going at a time. And I have back to back to back to back lessons. All of my students are in ability groups. So I have multiple math classes, I have multiple ELA classes, and I can't get in there until my last class is closed. So having them in that waiting room kind of allows me to pop in and then put them all in the classroom at one time, with all of these settings set up for everyone when they enter. So that's also something that's handy as well. Another thing you might want to put out to your students, because there's that waiting room function, encourage them to get into the class 5 to 10 minutes early. That way, if they experience any tech issues, today your computer decided it just had to do updates, or it's having trouble connecting for some reason, that allows them some time to troubleshoot before class actually starts. And they are in the waiting room. They're not able to chat back and forth. They're not able to turn their videos on and off. So it's a safe, unmonitored place to be, so that when you do join the classroom, you can bring them all in and then you're present to manage the group. Also, when you have students in your room and there are participants, they are going to have a set of tools along the bottom here. They're going to be able to raise their hand. They're going to have a green check yes, a red X no, a go faster, a couple of other features there. That yes and no is a quick way to check for understanding. It's a quick way to check for participation, and to engage the students. Hey, give me a green check if everybody can hear me. Great, we'll get started. Give me a green check if you agree with Sally's opinion on the problem and solution of the story. Give me a red X if you disagree. And if you gave me a red X, why don't you tell me in chat what your thoughts are? And of course, keeping it positive and giving good feedback and stuff like that. Another item is chat, which is apparently full screen for some reason. There we go. This can be controlled within the classroom as well. You can turn it all on, like completely off. An example of that may be, all right, boys and girls, I gave you the first 5 minutes of class to catch up with your friends. Now I'm going to turn chat off so we can refocus on what we're going to be learning today. Or, boys and girls, chat seems to be a little bit off task. We're talking about things that don't involve parallelograms or quadrilaterals. So I'm going to turn chat off for a minute so that we can refocus. There's also the aspect of having the host only. This may be a good setting to use if you are teaching youngers. K1, maybe even 2 might struggle a little bit with using the chat box anyway. So their questions would probably only be to the teacher anyway. So that's one aspect. Everyone publicly or everyone publicly and privately. And again, it all kind of goes along with what your preferred classroom management style is. From experience, just like in a brick and mortar classroom, start with less and then build up, because they've got to learn how to self-manage and what the teacher's expectations are. And that's going to take a little bit of time, just like it does. You know, we spend our first few weeks of school every year establishing our classroom management. We're going to be doing that again when we are embarking in this virtual classroom environment. Oftentimes when they come into the room, I'll have my slide up on the board of my expectations for class. And I will share that slide here in some upcoming videos that I'll be putting together. That just kind of lets them know what I expect them to have ready and be prepared to do for every class and what that's going to look like. And I'll post that for the first several classes we have together just as a reminder. Let's see, what else do we have for tools? There's the reactions that the students have. They have the round of applause and a thumb up, and that just kind of puts it right above their head in their tile. If Sally was brave enough to read to the whole class, make sure they give them a round of applause. Or if you agree, give me a thumbs up, just like you would in a physical environment. But what this does is it puts that little emoji in their screen tile for each student. Breakout rooms is definitely can be a great tool. I would get comfortable with the main room, before you start embarking with breakout rooms. But this can be for partner work, this can be for group work, where you send them in with several questions to work together as a team. And just like you would in a brick and mortar classroom, give them roles to fulfill. You're the group leader, you're the group secretary, you're the group, give them each a job. They can screen capture what they completed and bring it back to the main room when the time is up. There's a lot of wonderful functionality to those breakout rooms, and if you're not sure how to use them, get some volunteers from class to meet up with you in your office hours. Sally and Bobby, I could really use some help figuring out breakout rooms. Would you mind logging into my Zoom room with me at this time, and we can kind of play around with breakout rooms? They'll love it. It's like they're your special helpers. And then, let's see, sharing your screen. The whiteboard is there. Most of my lessons are built in PowerPoint, but I do a lot of sharing videos, especially in math, science, and history. If you're going to share videos or music content of any kind, make sure that share computer sound is checked down here, or else they're only going to be able to see the video and not hear it. So I'm going to go ahead and share a whiteboard screen just for the sake of letting you see this. Close chat, make that big. So when you go into a shared screen, your tools automatically pop up as the host. Your students can't see this. This only shows up on your screen. But all of your annotation tools are there. You can grab that participant tab again if it disappears, or you can bring the chat back up. There's also disable attending annotation. If you don't want them to have the ability to draw on the screen, you can turn it off. And you can turn it back on when it's time to draw, or write, or type, or anything on the screen. You can also show the name of annotators. This is really handy because when Sally does put her answer on the board, you see which one belongs to Sally. You can see who is participating, who is not, and if you give an exit ticket, for instance, boys and girls, we studied the short A today. Before you leave class today, I'd like everyone to put a short A 3-letter word on the board, and then you'll be able to see all of your students that participated, save it, or take a screenshot of it, and you've got your exit ticket. You've got a quick teacher assessment for the end of class. Another thing to note is when you are annotating on the board of any kind, it will go to the next screen. So when you change your PowerPoint slide to the next one, that's going to stay there unless you clear the screen each time. That was a learning curve for me. What else can you do? You can do all sorts of annotations, and you can stop your video, you can stop sharing, you can do all sorts of stuff from here. You can draw pretty much anything you need to. You can make grids if you're doing geometry. You can make those shapes, you can find the area, you can find the volume. It's really handy. If you are sharing videos, like from Khan Academy or Engage New York or whatever, you can pause the video and the students can actually annotate on the board. So if they give you a problem in the video, you can say, okay, boys and girls, what should we do? What is the length of this side? And you can draw on the screen, do everything, clear it, and then hit play, and you can see if you did it right. Let's see if we solved it right. Or if you're doing mystery science, and Doug asks a question, hit pause, discuss it as a group, and then hit play again. It's really user-friendly in Zoom to be able to use different types of videos and things like that. So I'll go ahead and take my whiteboard back down. It's back to full screen here. So those are just some ins and outs of Zoom.